OCD has been known about in some form since at least the 15th century. Back then, like a lot of medical conditions, it was very misunderstood and not treated very well. In the 1400s, the majority of people were quite religious. The church had a very tight hold on the people as beliefs melded with science. This is why both the patterns of OCD itself, along with the ways people tried to treat it, had such a focus on religious beliefs. In that time, OCD focused on blasphemous thoughts and religious compulsions such as repetitive prayers. This can be seen in Marjorie Kemp's autobiography written in the 15th century, supposedly the earliest account of unwanted thoughts, as well as being the first English-language autobiography. Because of this melding of religion and early science, the way that religious scrupulosity, or OCD, was treated was by more religion. Some in the Roman Catholic Church in this time told those suffering with OCD that all they needed to do was follow their spiritual advisor's instructions more. Just obey, and it'll go away. I don't think that would have done much. However, some other clergymen told sufferers to distract themselves with other things. Now this does, to a point, align with what medical professionals tell their patients these days. Although I do wonder what, in particular, these suggested distractions might be. Gradually, things changed, but not exactly for the better. In the 17th century, it was strongly believed that people were made up of 4 humors that needed to stay balanced: black bile, yellow bile, phlegm, and blood. If these were not balanced, then you would become ill. This is where we come to the practice of bloodletting. Oh yeah, they did that for OCD too. I think they really took a step backwards here with their OCD treatment methods. They would also employ laxatives to rid the body of toxins that they thought were causing the behaviors. It has also been said that sedatives were used, as well as astrological readings? I guess you can't be a bother to 17th century society if you're asleep, and I don't even know what to make of using astrology to treat OCD. I know we were quite interested in planets and space at that time, but I'm really not sure how it would relate. After that step back in logic, we can fast forward to the 19th century. We were finally starting to see these disorders as mental health, not religion, not humors, astrological, or otherwise. It's just a start, though. There were still much different beliefs in different parts of the world. For example, some French psychiatrists thought of it as an impulse disorder, that people with OCD did not have strong enough willpower to overcome their compulsive needs to perform compulsions. Other French psychs thought it was more emotion-based, considering the anxiety involved. On the other hand, a lot of German psychiatrists believed it was a thought disorder, like paranoia. There was one German psychiatrist in particular that made huge progress in how we currently understand OCD. Karl Westphal made a differentiation between OCD and phobias, making OCD its own disorder. That's great, you might be saying. People with OCD were still kept in mental asylums against their will, though. Yeah, you're right. There was still a lot to be learned about OCD. So, at the start of the 20th century, we have Freud. Yeah, that Freud. Mr. Tell me about your relationship with your mother, Freud. Because he was so focused on the subconscious, it's no surprise that he thought obsessions and OCD were symbolic of repressed subconscious desires. Like germs and cleanliness, OCD was somehow related to the unconscious repressed sexual desire. For more Freud weirdness, I'll just link Ratman in the description. Anyways, psychiatrists started putting more faith into talk therapy and medication. In the 1960s, a psychologist named Victor Meyer created a treatment for OCD that is now used as the main method to treat it: exposure response prevention therapy. It was further worked on and improved by psychiatrist Stanley Jack Brockman. According to a speech reported in the fall 2005 edition of Obsessive Compulsive Foundation newsletter, he first tried ERP with 2 patients of Middlesex Hospital. One had severe fears about disease and dirt, spending most of her time with cleaning compulsions. In treatment, she was prevented from repeatedly cleaning through turning off water in her hospital room, as well as limiting her access to cleaning supplies. The other had blasphemous, disruptive thoughts about sex that caused her to take upwards of 6 hours to get dressed in the morning. This patient was exposed to triggering items and told to imagine distressing scenes, while being prevented from performing any compulsions. After over 2 months of ERP, both patients had significant drops in anxiety levels and were able to return to their everyday lives with a large decrease in OCD symptoms, despite neither being cured. This was the start of OCD treatment as we know it today. Now, we use ERP in combination with medication to treat OCD. These days, psychiatrists also employ the use of acceptance and commitment therapy, also known as ACT. Honestly, it's pretty much what it sounds like. You accept that you're having these thoughts and sit with them for a minute. You are open to these thoughts and aware of them, so you can actively choose how you react to that and what you do next. It's a part of mindfulness, which has become quite a big movement, especially over the past few years. And speaking of the past few years, in the DSM-5, OCD has been separated into its own category, separate from anxiety disorders. It's been this way since 2013, which is great. It's nice to accept that it's not just anxiety. Now, that's all well and good for a history of OCD, but who can we point to throughout history that has had supposed or confirmed signs of OCD? Because, at least for me, this really cements the idea that OCD is not just a problem that's happening now, but something that we can point to throughout history, and put faces or names to the people who have had to deal with this disorder throughout history. The first person that, personally, comes to mind when I think about people with OCD is Howie Mandel. You know, the deal or no deal guy. He has been very open about his journey with OCD and his intrusive thoughts about germs. Note his famous fist bump. There are other people in history you may not have known that had OCD. One example could be Nikola Tesla. He had obsessions relating to the number 3. It is reported that he would swim 33 laps in the pool, starting over if interrupted or losing count. He would also walk around the block 3 times before entering a building. Another person you may know, if we jump back to the present, is Leonardo DiCaprio. He played a person with OCD in the movie The Aviator, a biographical film based on film producer and pilot Howard Hughes. The performance by DiCaprio was said to be a huge setback in coping with his own OCD, having let his OCD run wild in order to connect better with Hughes and portray Hughes' OCD realistically. There are tons of people out in the world dealing with OCD. Now, I hope that within these last few minutes, you've been able to learn more about the treatment of OCD, as well as put some names and faces to obsessive compulsive disorder. I hope this video has been interesting and informative. If you have any other topics about mental health or LGBTQIA+ things that you would like to see covered, please let me know down in the comments. As always, resources are listed down in the description. Thanks for watching the OCD Enby. Stay safe out there.